Okay, so this is something a little bit different. Welcome. I don't really have much of an intro. I don't have like a tuber intro. So instead, I'll just say, video begin. In this video, I'm going to talk about two movies I've seen recently. One is Spood, No Way Home. The other is Matrix, Resuscitation. So I don't know if anyone here has seen these films, but I'm going to start with the spoiler-free version, and then I'm going to, talk about the spoilers. And you'll be able to tell when you see this. Oh god, I can't find good music for this. When you see this, you will know that we're in spoilers. We're not now, but that's when you will know. At first I wasn't sure these movies would have anything to do with each other, and they really don't. But there's some weird connection between the two in regards to nostalgia, pleasing the fans and giving people what they want. But they're two different types of movies, and I'm just going to talk about them. No spoilers, and then I will warn you, and there will be spoilers for both. So, let me find good music first. I'll be right back. Donkey Kong Country music it is. Okay, so, first movie I'm going to talk about is the Spider-Man movie. I already talked about this in another playthrough I was doing. I guess it was Animal Crossing. No spoiler version is this movie was actually really, really good. I recently brushed up on the Sam Raimi Spider-Man, and I don't know what I was expecting, but I did like the other ones. I respect what the Marvel Universe can do because of how fucking massive it is, but the movies do get... There's been so many. It's an oversaturation. And they changed cinema in a lot of ways. So there's definitely some innate hatred for these Marvel movies that people have at the moment. But for me, I just treat them as like, oh, it's a fun movie. And following the Spider-Man all the way through to this one, it's been pretty good. I gotta say, the three movies have been solid. Maybe this one might be my favorite. My essential kind of immediate thoughts were this. Tom Holland does a very good job. The performances in this movie were all good. This is no spoiler because it's in the trailer. You can see the Goblin right there and Doc Ock. But Willem Dafoe was amazing. And Al Molina was amazing. All the old villain stuff that they did, I thought worked well. And they actually ended up giving these characters like arcs. And it's kind of mind-blowing how they were able to bring together all this stuff from like separate movies with different tones and make it work. But what was in the movie also kind of really worked for me. Like the Doctor Strange stuff was really good. The visual effects, of course, are amazing. It's modern Marvel movie. Why wouldn't it be? The action was good and all that, but what I was more concerned about was the fact that they played I Zimbra by the Talking Heads to start the movie, and I thought that was very good. But the whole arc of, his identity has been revealed. What does he do? He freaks out, and it starts to affect his friend's life, and friends' lives, more than one friend. And seeing where that goes, I thought was really interesting. Yeah, so it worked. I mean, for me, this movie really worked, and I don't have a huge investment. I don't even really love Spider-Man, but I think pretty much the whole movie I was interested in where it would go next, and I really kind of wasn't disappointed. It's amazing how it balanced all the disparate elements and still gave Tom Holland Spider-Man some character development. Still, actually, by the end of the movie, there's real stakes, and some really dark shit happens, and it's done in a really interesting way. So yeah, I like this movie a lot. Just good comic book movie. I would say for someone who's not like obsessive about Marvel movies, this is an entertaining one. I haven't seen many of the other ones this year. And don't get me started on the TV shows because they're fine until they're not. But this might be one of my favorite Marvel movies. that they've done, and I don't say that lightly. Also, J.K. Simmons is great. So that's the non-spoiler version, okay? Now for The Matrix. So I'm going to do this one non-spoiler, and then we'll just, you can turn off the video, and we'll go into spoilers in a little while. But first, this movie was so weird. It is a movie that knows it's a reboot, comments on it, like, incessantly, to the point where I think it actually detracts from the movie. Saying that you are aware of the thing doesn't necessarily make the thing less bad. And that's the problem with Matrix Resurrections. Lana Wachowski knows what kind of movie this is supposed to be from a studio perspective to make money. And yet there's like a rebellion of like, well, I don't want to do that 100%, but then does it anyway. On the positive side, there's some interesting world building. There's a lot of interesting concepts. I like the philosophy. Some of the scenes introduces some like thought stuff. It's a little on the nose, truthfully, to the point where it's like you almost see them winking at the camera like, hey, 2021 viewer, this is how it is. And I guess that makes sense for a Matrix movie because that's kind of what this movie series has been. Even though at this point, I'm going to go ahead and say it, there's only one truly great Matrix movie. The sequels have scattered good moments, and this is kind of the same thing. The movie, Keanu is fine. He is still Keanu. I think he's actually kind of settled in his ways to the point where I like the dude, but he really just kind of plays himself. And it does work for a movie like this. Carrie-Anne Moss was great. You can see there's Morpheus there with the crazy suit. That's a different actor, and that actor is good. He's actually a fantastic actor. He did not have to be called Morpheus. And there's also a character that plays the villain from the movies. This isn't really much of a spoiler because it's in the trailers, but the problem I have is there's no need to call these characters these specific names. They could have done some callbacks. They could have tried some interesting things, but then I felt like they tried real hard to recreate the magic of the first couple movies, but specifically the first one. And to the point where, and again, no spoilers because this is in the trailer, they're literally showing you clips from the Matrix movies throughout this whole movie. So if you forgot the movies, don't worry, you'll be reminded because a good chunk of those movies is in this movie. But don't worry because also every couple minutes there's a wink and a nod like, yeah, we know it's a reboot. Some of the dialogue is just straight up, I laughed, I rolled my eyes, I cringed. I gotta be honest. It's like, I enjoyed the parody of like focus group movies where it's like, yo, bro, we gotta get the WTF factor into the gray matter. Literally a line of dialogue. And then you have Neil Patrick Harris's character also delivering some particularly hip, super cool, 2021 dialogue. And I gotta be honest, it didn't really work for me. My theater was pretty empty, and I heard a couple people groan. There were some laughs at the right moments, and there were some laughs at the wrong moments. The action is fine. It's nothing special because, again, all movies look amazing. And in order to redefine an entire genre like The Matrix originally did, which, I can't overstate how fucking impressive that movie was when it came out, this does not really have that factor. And I don't think it could have because it's been 5 years. 5 years? What? God, how long has it been? 20 years. Over 20 years, 21 years. And where did 5 years come from? So the action is fine, but I almost kind of feel like, especially the end, gets really muddled. And the action, while it's there, it doesn't really Some of it feels very callbacky on purpose, and some of it just feels kind of bland, which is a shame because it's a Matrix movie. Again, nothing terrible, and some of it was actually pretty good, but it was a little, like, I don't know, limp. So let me think of other good things to say about it, because there were some things, like I said, some good. There was some good metatextual stuff, which they could have kept to a bare minimum and not beat you over the head with it. There were some good philosophical angles that I thought, you know, if they're going to do the philosophy of the Matrix in this new iteration, fair enough. I think they could go in that direction. The execution, however, I'm not so sure about. The movie has a lot of great ideas, and I just don't feel like it delivered on very many of them. A couple. And, you know, some of it was kind of interesting. And when they showed, you know, it's not a spoiler, but when they showed Real World versus Matrix, some of the Real World stuff was actually weirdly more interesting to me. So, and, you know, some of it looked very much like The Matrix, and I guess that was 100% intentional because they were trying to recreate all the story beats. It was very Force Awakens-y in that way. I don't know, this is probably on par with Revolutions, but yet I feel like, again, some of the philosophy was a little bit more interesting, and, you know, it just... some of the exposition dumps were pretty hard to follow, and some of the performances were just kind of there just to move the thing along without it feeling good. I'm not a movie critic. I don't make movies. I'm just telling you how I felt. And it was a long movie. It's over 2 hours, and it felt its length. There were times where I was looking at my phone. I'm like, okay, are we wrapping this up yet? So that's not good. I grew up with The Matrix. I say grew up, but it came out when I was a teenager, and I watched it over and over again because it really was a great movie. I even liked a lot of the sequels. I rewatched that whole trilogy this year, and there's a lot I liked, and especially the world building. Even if the execution fell flat in many ways, the sequels had some good world building, and I really didn't like a lot of the Zion stuff because just it got too dumb, and the action was just like shoot things in whole. But I'll give it to this movie for trying to buck the trend of just cash grab. The only problem is it keeps saying that it's doing that, and then it ends up doing it anyway. And then whatever cool, clever ideas are in there, I feel like they just weren't executed properly. So that's my Matrix spoiler-free review. Now, I'm going to put up the spoiler. So, now's your chance. I'm going to start with Matrix. If you want, you know, watch the movies, come back. You don't have to ever come back. But before I say the spoilers, I'll just say I don't think it's a particularly amazing movie by any means, but Spider-Man was actually quite good, weirdly enough. And that's, for me, the opposite of what I was hoping for or expected. So there's that. You know, not great. Sorry. And spoilers will begin now. Okay, so here's the problem. There's a dude who plays Morpheus who is good, but they could have called his character something else. He is a program. The machines now work with humans, the ones that want to. They're treated, you know, like sentient life forms. That's what the end of the Matrix movies led to. So Neo's sacrifice was not in vain. I appreciate that. They rebuilt Neo and Trinity. They have them near each other, but not too close. And that's a way to improve the Matrix. So the problem is, again, interesting ideas, lack of a way to follow it through. And there's, for me, no bigger example than like when they comment on you have the new Morpheus in a room with a projector playing the old Matrix, which, by the way, is a game in this universe, in this movie. Okay, Keanu Reeves is a programmer who programmed the Matrix, the trilogy, but they're games, even though they're movies, and they're being projected as movies. Weird. So they're being projected. Morpheus is talking to Neo while Morpheus is talking to Neo on the projector. And it's like, why not call this character something else? Lawrence Fishburne, for me, is Morpheus. It doesn't compute. You could call this character something else. Keanu programmed this character to be Morpheus with some Agent Smith stuff as well in his game. I don't know. And then somehow they hack into the game and they get this Morpheus out, who's supposed to get Neo out. Listen, story beats that are supposed to, like, mirror the first Matrix so that it's familiar, but with, like, twists and comments on it. And yet it just, something about it made me just, like, I'm just, like, tensing up in the theater, like, no, don't do this. They could have had this Morpheus dude, say, I have the code from Morpheus. My name is Orpheus. I am a different Morpheus. However, I'm similar, and I can help you, Neo. Let me unlock your true potential like Morpheus did before you. Before me. That would have been great, because the actor is fantastic. He could have played his own damn character. So there's that. Then they have a dude who's playing Agent Smith, who is basically just some dude who works at the company with Neo, making the game. And then you find out he's Agent Smith. And there's no reason for that. Once again, you could have said, well, I was, some leftover code from Agent Smith. I have that code. I wish to be greater than the sum of my parts. And therefore, Neo, I'm back, Mr. Anderson. Whatever. But not, they could have called him something different, or they could have written a different, like, motivation or plot line for this dude. The actor is fine, but he's no Hugo Weaving. There's literally no need for this, aside from remember this, remember that, and yet the movie just keeps fucking commenting on all this stuff. Like, every scene, every 10 minutes, someone, like, winks at the camera and is like, well, that's what they did in the trilogy that you programmed, Neo, remember that? He's like, no, it's real? Oh my god. So, that fell flat. The machines working together with the humans in this new place with Niobe there is very, I think, interesting. Could have been explored a little bit more. I think there's a scene where the Merovingian shows up as a homeless person, and it's not explained very well, but I guess it doesn't really need to be. I thought it was kind of cool to have the callback to the character, but the fights amount to just a bunch of goons being shot and then shooting. And, I gotta be honest, it doesn't really carry any weight. At a certain point, I'm like, I don't think I care about any of these characters. And then Carrie-Anne Moss, comes into play a little bit later on, and Trinity, and she's really good. And then they do a flipperoo, on Neo a bit, which is fine if there was, like, a good reason for it. Maybe there is. Maybe I missed it in the dialogue because I was too busy, like, shaking my head. There's the end action scene, which is just them in the street, and there's a couple cool ideas where, like, at one point, so they're called bots now, right? And they explain they're not agents the same way they used to be. They're bots, which are just, like, planted within the people to keep them docile and, like, to keep their ideas in line with the bots' ideas, right? And they just have green matrix eyes. And I swear to God, when they introduce the concept of the bots, the character looks at the camera and says, do you get it, you fucks? It's Twitter. Do you get it? Misinformation. I couldn't believe when they did that. Okay, they didn't, but they could have. So, that was, I get it. It doesn't bother me too much if it's done well. It's all about good writing, and I felt like a lot of this writing was square peg, round hole. There was an attempt. I appreciate the Wachowskis trying to push boundaries and trying to not make the same thing over and over and over again and trying to say something in their movies. However, the last movie of theirs that I really enjoyed was V for Vendetta. So, you know, I mean, a lot of swings, big swings, maybe a lot of misses. This movie for me was a miss. And the the real problem is it tries to do this whole nostalgia thing in a way that's not satisfying at all. It just kind of shows too much of the original movies. It comments on itself. The action is just fine. And it just feels unnecessary. It feels like there's kind of no point for this movie to exist. Even if it does try to update some of the philosophical angles to 2021. Some of it works, some of it doesn't. As a big Matrix fan, I don't see myself watching this movie a whole lot. If they end up making a sequel, you know, I'm sure they will turn this into a new trilogy. I guess we'll see. Yeah, I'll have to watch it. Like, I'm not gonna just swear off everything Matrix like a baby. If you know, if something comes out, I'll probably watch it. But really, if this is where we're launching from, God, you know, I mean, at least Force Awakens hit those beats and started. It felt like it could start a good trilogy. Little did we know there would be director wars and, you know, nonsense. But this just feels weird, and I don't really care anymore. And the only thing I want to know is maybe, I guess, show me more of what happened with the factions of machines that were good. That's really the only interesting thing that I'm getting from this. And I don't know. There was one more thing. Oh yeah, Neil Patrick Harris's character and the a couple of the game designer characters have the worst dialogue for me, where I'm just watching these characters deliver lines and saying all this like dumb shit, and I'm really I was just checking out mentally. So what a shame. A lot of potential, some good stuff. Again, when it felt like the Matrix, when they were going through and learning stuff, and when they were like rescuing Neo and taking him to the new human city, and also, you know, some of the crew. I liked like the blue hair person. Her name is Bugs. She's actually pretty good. They didn't really give her a whole lot to do, but it felt like a Matrix character. And then there was just a bunch of like filler. Maybe the dude who, you know, contacts her and talks like is pretty good. So yeah, some good. It's not all terrible. I mean, it's definitely watchable, and I think some people will like it more than me. But I'm not so sure I feel like this was a necessary film to make. It, like I said, doesn't do nostalgia right. Whereas the Spider-Man movie, which again, very low stakes for me. I've only just seen the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. Never saw the Andrew Garfield ones. The Spider-Man movie does nostalgia a lot better. Because, first of all, this movie tells its own story, regardless of the nostalgia. Okay? You have... I can't believe I'm defending a Marvel movie, but it needs it. It's the #1 movie in the world right now, you know? But it really has this whole angle of like Spider-Man trying to figure out how to deal with him making his friends' lives worse. They can't get into college. Everyone knows who he is. J. Jonah Jameson is thinking that they're putting stuff in the water because the frogs are... Anyway, so you have that whole angle that Spider-Man, Peter Parker, is going through. And regardless of the nostalgia stuff, that arc comes to a really kind of gut-wrenching but also satisfying conclusion. And I appreciate what it did. which is basically started over. I mean, big spoilers, but by the end, you have a character who no one knows about. They don't. Peter Parker is totally forgotten by the people that love him, the Avengers. All that's left is Spider-Man. And I know they greenlit another trilogy. So, you know, the meme online has been like this whole trilogy was just an origin story for Spider-Man. And I disagree with that, but at the same time, I get it. It actually left me interested to see what he would do and how he would deal with this new reality he has to live with. And, you know, big spoilers, but Aunt May dies, which I didn't expect. It's a little bit of a weird death scene, truthfully. She like stands up and delivers the line, but the line it had some impact coming from her. And then you have, you know, his friends forget about him. And, you know, Mary Jane MJ, forgets about him. And he kind of, you know, wants to reconnect at the end, but he just decides, you know what? Maybe it's better off they don't know me, because wherever I go, trouble follows. They will have a better life in MIT if I just go my own way. And he has to deal with this crushing loneliness. It's heavy shit, and I can, you know, really find something to latch onto there. It's a really good character arc. It's really sad, and that's minus all the other shit in the movie. Just the emotional core of the movie is weirdly, like, really good for a Marvel movie. And it doesn't feel like modern Marvel in the same way many of their other films do. It just feels like a good action movie with good characters, decent plot. Like I said, Doctor Strange shows up. I like him better than almost all the other Marvel characters because he works really great with an ensemble, and his powers are weird, make no sense whatsoever, but it's interesting. And we have a Sam Raimi Multiverse of Madness movie, a sequel to Doctor Strange coming out, which the trailer was included with this at the end. Looks pretty cool. But yeah, no, Doctor Strange functions as he should. He gets the ball rolling. The villains are great. The whole idea of Peter wanting to like rehabilitate the villains is a very interesting Spider-Man-y thing to do. And you have, you know, the Sandman, Goblin, Ock. You got Lizard, who cares, and Jamie Foxx as Jamie Foxx with electricity. And I've not seen the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies, but, you know, it was cool to have villains from all the movies represented. And Willem Dafoe steals the show. Dude is perfect as Green Goblin. Even after 20 years, he's the clear, you know, villain of the whole movie. He's the one that kills Aunt May. Again, you know there's spoilers. And it's really fucking kind of sad, but also, like, the way he beats the shit out of Peter at that moment. Like, he sells it. I mean, even better than his first time around. Especially because he doesn't have the mask throughout most of it. But they humanize him too, and when you get to see Norman Osborn as a person, you know, in some ways, I think they almost went too far, because he's just like an innocent man, you know, like an innocent old dude, compared to how he was in the first Spider-Man. But it's really good that you get to see these characters as humans, and, you know, they get to interact. They don't really do much with the Lizard. And Sandman just wants to go home. But it's cool to see them interact together. So the villain stuff, I think, was handled great. And Doc Ock was perfect. And by the end, Doc Ock basically has the most amount of... You probably have the most amount of empathy for him. And part of it is Alfred Molina's performance. He's so good. And Willem Dafoe just is the best actor alive right now, maybe. I'm being a little hyperbolic, but maybe. So yeah, I really enjoyed that whole angle, but the pacing of the movie's really good. The effects are, you know, mostly great, and the end gets a little brain foggy, but it's high quality shit. It's legible. You can follow the action. It's not just... That's one of the things with the Matrix movie is a lot of the end of it and the fight scenes. I know that the Matrix revolutionized fight scenes and special effects for fight scenes, the original. This one was... Some of it was pretty good, and some of it was just quick cut, punch through the wall, quick cut, slow motion, punch through the wall. And it was a little bit confusing in my brain. And this movie had some of that, but a lot more of it was just very... You can understand what's happening, you can see it. It's just... It was done well. And especially with each of the villains' unique traits. That was handled well. The supporting cast was good. MJ actually felt like a character this time. And not just... yeah. I felt like she had a lot more to do, and she was a lot more human, and the Ned is always good, and Aunt May was great. So yeah, the supporting cast was all great, which brings me to the Spider-Man. So this movie has the other Spider-Man. It was supposed to be a secret. It was leaked. And it was great. But I went in kind of expecting that, and then seeing them, I was like, all right, well, at least I didn't get too spoiled. But Andrew Garfield shows up first, and he has some good comedic scenes, but also, damn, that dude can act. He probably stole the show. Like, I haven't seen his movies, but I liked his Spider-Man the most. Just because he was so earnest. He looked the part. He there's a lot of pain that he carries, and some of the monologues he delivers kind of blew me away. It's a shame he got saddled with 2 shitty movies, because this made me much more interested in his version of the character. Toby was fantastic because they even joked that he looked like a youth pastor, and he does, but he was actually really good because he was the older Spider-Man. He's been doing this. He's got the same Tobey Maguire Spider-Man shit going on. He's very, kind of chill and just lets things happen. But he also feels like a more experienced character. He's like the mentor, and he shoots web from his wrist, and it might be sticky icky, and no one knows why. So that's a little weird, but he was good. Andrew Garfield was great. The interaction between these characters, Tom Holland really had a great chemistry with them. They all felt pretty natural talking, and the character development between them was very strong, and they even had arcs. Like, take away the fact that this is nostalgia bait, but it's done well. The villains had arcs. They got second chances. Obviously, Tom Holland's Spider-Man had a huge arc, but Andrew Garfield talks about, some of the stuff that he regrets and gets a chance to make it right. They kind of have a meta moment where they call him amazing because he's like, he's like acting like he's kind of lame, which I feel like is maybe a reference to his films. So you have that. And then Tobey Maguire also has an arc, which he gets to teach a little bit, and he gets to kind of show the Tom Holland Peter Parker, like, listen, dude, you don't have to do this. I've been there, and it leads to just more pain. And that end scene where he stops him from killing Goblin. I can't believe I'm saying these words out loud. Stops him from killing Goblin. It's a weird sentence, but it's true. When he does that, it's actually a really good moment. So, yeah, there's so many little moments that worked. There was a lot of humor, but when it needed to be, it was really serious. The acting was good across the board. Like, Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire could have showed up, got a paycheck, went home. They put in some legit performances. And that's what, again, I'm talking about nostalgia done right. The characters have arcs. They have a little bit more to do. They're not just cameos. Like, when the other Spider-Men show up, they actually have stuff to do. They're supporting characters. And the villains all have a little moment, too. And it's pretty... it's a big movie. Doesn't feel as long as it is. And the pacing of the movie is really I think it's really good. The only downside is there's like a fetch quest in the middle that gets a little lame. There's a couple things that you might just expect to happen, and they happen. And you know, it's the Marvel quippiness that if you're not into that, maybe this won't do anything to win you over. But I'm gonna say that this is maybe one of my top Marvel movies, up there with, you know, Infinity War, Thor Ragnarok, Iron Man 1. I think those are probably the ones I like the most, and this was that. So I'm glad I saw the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man stuff. It made this more impactful. But even though I didn't see the Andrew Garfield stuff, it still was very good. So, again, the movies are very different movies. They're both taking characters from 20 years ago and putting them in this new time. Except one movie actually gives them, like I said, it's kind of hard to explain because the Matrix movie attempted to give Neo and Trinity, like, you know, things to do, and Keanu has to make choices and the nature of choices and all that stuff. But yet, it feels like they're retreading old territory just to get Neo and Trinity back together. And doesn't feel like anything necessary or new. It feels like they're just dragging the corpses of these characters out to be filmed so that they can have a new Matrix movie out. It really, I mean, it's hard to describe. It's kind of almost an intangible thing. Intangible, but yet that's how it felt. So, whereas this movie, you have these characters, we haven't seen Tobey Maguire Spider-Man in years, and the villains, especially Green Goblin, and yet somehow they justify their purpose, they justify their existence, they all contribute to the story and to the character arc of what Peter Parker has to go through. And he learns from them, and yet they also kind of have their own moments. So it's a really delicate balancing act that pays off, I think, No Way Home. And yet Matrix, while not completely terrible, and some good character moments for sure, even if some of the acting is a little stiff, and some of the characters don't need to be there, or even be called those characters, again, feels very clinical. Feels like, okay, what do we do with these characters? Doesn't feel organic. So, I mean, you may disagree, you may have a different opinion, and I'm kind of curious, genuinely, if you've seen these movies, drop a comment. Let me know how you feel. If you're someone that loved the Matrix movie, let me know why, because I'm kind of genuinely curious. Maybe your perspective will change mine a bit, or I'll learn a little bit. Maybe I missed something. I mean, I'm still going to have my gut reaction. The movie was just disappointing. And if you hated Spider-Man, let me know. I'm kind of just curious about your opinion, and I respect other people's thoughts about this stuff. But those are mine. So, yeah, those are my movie reviews. I'm going to say that both movies have some merit, except The Matrix has a whole lot more demerit. So, anyway, thank you for watching, take care, and see you in the future with more movie reviews. Never. Goodbye. Maybe never.